Your camera looks a bit tilted to me. Oh, is it or not? Not quite square. My father was from Yugoslavia. He came to England after the Second World War. He was in a prisoner of war camp. He was on his way to Canada to meet his so-called fiancée, I think a Canadian nurse that had been working in the prison camps. I think it was probably more of a marriage of convenience, or maybe he was a bit of a Romeo, I don't know. He stopped in London and he met my mother, and they were married within 12 weeks, which is a bit of a strange coincidence, and maybe that wasn't love either. But they gave birth to me and 3 brothers and a sister, and they were together for 60, 70 years. I'm the oldest, yeah. I'm the oldest. My sister is the second oldest, Kathy. Melvin's the third. Terry is the fourth, and Philip is the fifth. When my father came to England, his name was Bajic, and because he was a foreigner, he changed his name to an English name because he thought it would get him a job and maybe some housing. So he changed his name to Roberts, and he'd forgotten that he'd already christened my brother Robert. So it was Robert Terence Roberts. So we call him Terry because Robert Roberts doesn't work. When I was born, my mother was homeless and she was living in a field on Christmas Day because my father couldn't find any lodgings, and they were living in a haystack. And on Boxing Day, the ambulance came to pick her up. They had to cross 2 fields with a stretcher to take her to the hospital where I was born. So I was a Christmas baby. And my father and mother moved quite a lot because trying to find houses was very hard, and for the first year or 2 they lived in a small van. Then they moved into a bus, and then I think when I was 3 or 4 my father got a job on a farm and they moved into a cottage, and from there we moved probably another 6 or 7 times, and then they moved to Basildon, which was one of the new towns that was built for after the war, so for people to move out of London to get jobs, to get industry going. And I lived in Basildon for 20 years. That's where I grew up and went to school. Our schooling was very much geared to industry, working in a factory, working on a building site, or work in the shop. We wasn't being educated to become lawyers or, architects or anything of importance. We were work fodder. I suppose just generally playing around with my friends. In the evenings we'd come home from school and we'd go out and play like run-outs in the woods. We'd go and hide and people try and find us. Like hide and seek, yeah. And we'd invent games. They were fun times. When I was about 9 or 10. The best used to be my younger brother Terry, because we used to hang out together. We had very similar interests. Lately, in the last 20 years, 30 years, it's been my second oldest brother Melvin, only because our lives are entwined somewhat, living in the same towns, doing the same things. Like a dog on a lead, I can't let him off the lead, he's always around somewhere. My father was always working, my mother was always working, so we didn't have a family life where we was all, loving and cuddly and nice to each other. They were good parents, but we came home from school and then we played till it was bedtime. All the kids in the street were kind of together. It was a very safe environment, so it was nice. That was family life for me, playing with my friends. Family life now is really my brother, who I hang out with, Melvin, occasionally my sister, and the occasional family visits when we have a get together 2 or 3 times a year. So my family really was my wife and 2 children, but even now, we're separated, but we're still close. My children are 36 years of age, twin daughters, so they're grown up. So there's no real family life for me at the moment. When I was young, when I was 11, I used to work on a milk round. In those days, milk could be delivered every day by a milk cart. So I used to get up before school and work for 2 hours and deliver milk and then go to school. When I was 12, 13, I worked on the markets 3 days a week, and I left school at 15 with no qualifications, and I ended up working with my father, who was a plasterer, working on building sites. When I was 19, 20, I met a girl, we started going out together, and we decided to get married. I was probably 23 then. We had a good time, but still I was normally working in the building site. I wasn't doing very much, never had much thoughts on life. When I was 26, we got divorced. We had no children, and I had a period of a year or 2 where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Just by chance, I met a young girl at a party from a friend of mine, and she was very educated, and she said that I needed qualifications. So the next day, I enrolled in college and enrolled to do my exams I should have done 10 years previously at school. In those days, I was lucky, because in those days, we got grants to go to college. We got paid to go to college by the government, so it was a nice situation, yeah. And that's when I decided to do photography. got interested in fashion and advertising photography. Then life to me was just about hanging around the West End of London, going to clubs, restaurants, taking photographs, being involved in art and design and fashion, and that's what I did. I worked with the British Design Council, British Film Institute, and yeah, we were having fun. It was just photography, photography, photography. Then I met my wife, Jane. She was very, very intelligent, very bright, knew a lot about art, design, about architecture, and she kind of more or less educated me in the wider aspects of art and design. We got married, and then we had children. And when I had the children, I decided I wanted to get a more permanent job and move out of London. I applied for a job as a photographic teacher in Suffolk, and I got the job, which was a surprise to me because I didn't consider myself academic. And I was in charge of the photography course there for a year. And after a year there, they promoted me and put me in charge of the art and design course. And I was in charge of building a new building for the art and design degree. And I was also in charge of writing a degree course for art and design, a modular course. Somehow got involved in making the videos, and I was asked to make a video at King's College Hospital on epilepsy surgery. So we made some videos on epilepsy surgery, kind of documentaries to educate consultants, doctors, and to educate carers on the effects of epilepsy and epilepsy surgery. From there, I got involved with a doctor from the Institute of Psychiatry. He was very proactive in promoting mental health. So we ended up running big video conferences and doing lots of programs to promote people's awareness for mental health in schizophrenia, bipolar, manic depression, and Lewy bodies, and those sorts of things. And I spent probably 4 years making documentaries and videos on mental health issues. And probably that was my first initiation into mental health. And for some reason, one day I was walking around my local town. I walked into a cafe that I'd never been into before. And I noticed in this cafe, there were all these lovely pictures and bits of information about things like Reiki, massage, reflexology. And I was curious. So I sat down and had a coffee. And then I asked the lady next to me, what do you do here? She said, well, we're a cafe and we also have therapy rooms here. So people come here and the therapists, they book slots in the therapy rooms. So the clients come here, they have a coffee. They know there's sessions booked for massage, for Reiki, for reflexology, and everyone's very happy. I decided, for some reason, I wanted to study Reiki. I did my Reiki levels 1, level 2, and I did my master's. I was learning about reflexology. I was getting involved in things like tarot cards and all aspects of sort of spiritualism, and it's all revolved around this cafe. Because the people that come in, there'd be tarot card readers, there'd be reflexologists, there'd be masseurs, there'd be people that were into all sorts of things. So there was a lot of information going around. This was back probably in 2000, 2006, 2007. I think probably I'd always been a bit spiritual because I'd always had experiences of ghosts and astral projection and journeys out of my body all through my life, but I never really understood it. It wasn't a positive experience, it was an experience that scared me. Yeah. In my first marriage, and I was in bed with my wife asleep, and suddenly I found myself floating on the ceiling, looking down at myself and my wife. I was 23 years of age, and that was my very, very first experience of out-of-body experience. And I did have a lot more experiences of astral projection, of traveling out my body, which used to scare me still, but they would happen. I would get kind of visions of visitations, of things appearing in my bed at night, late at night. And it sounds strange, but one of the serious ones was I woke up one day and there's like this old hag sitting at the end of my bed, like in a dark robe. It was horrible. Really scared. I'd always find, if I was sleeping on my own, I'd always find myself at 3 o'clock in the morning, there'd be a sense of something in the room and I'd be scared. Sometimes I'd be screaming. People would hear me screaming. They'd say, what's the matter? Oh, you're just having a nightmare. But these weren't nightmares. These were, I was awake. seriously awake. And this happened a lot right up until probably the time I was in Portugal, where I met this Red Indian chief. He was a shaman. And I spoke to him about, some of my experiences, and he actually took me on a shamanic journey. And I remember that night, that was the first night in my life, I slept outside the house on my own in the dark without feeling any fear. And I've never had any bad experiences since then. Back in 2007, and I found this lady online called Tanya Prince who was running courses. So I phoned her up and booked a course. She actually was one of the first people to start teaching people in EFT and training people. I went to Manchester and did my level 1 and level 2 EFT. And that was the start of a really nice friendship and a kind of a working partnership that I had with Tanya Prince. It's been still goes on today. And then I met my ex-partner, Bajic, who was diagnosed with cancer. And I did a lot of work with her, with the EFT and with Reiki, and spent probably 6 or 7 years working with her. She unfortunately died 5 years ago. 2 years before she died, we started to run retreats in Spain. We are now running menopause retreats, fitness retreats, Pilates, EFT retreats, chakra dance retreats. So what I'm doing is facilitating other people's retreats. I like helping people. I like pleasing people. I don't always make money out of it. It seems a nice thing to do. Yeah, so I don't know. We've got some big plans in the future, and hopefully they'll work. It's always a difficult question because I'm a great respecter of the values of Christianity. I understand that. And if people really practice Christianity properly, I'd be a positive supporter of that. But I don't believe in God as we're taught in schools or as we're taught in church. I do believe there is something up there. There is a God or a force. And I've had experiences of this myself, so I know. I think love is something that makes you feel happy, makes you feel safe. I think love's a really natural thing. I think there's a difference between real love and romantic love. When people are kind of obsessed or possessive or jealous or, they're dependent on people, that's a kind of love, but that's not real love. Real love is when you just love someone. It's a bit like family. Family have faults, they annoy you sometimes, but you always forgive them. It's never a serious issue. You love them. Proper environment, a good environment, to have good nurture around you, again, which is love, family support, friends support, partners support, and good nutrition. Influence, in the sense, or was most supportive of me would have been my wife, my second wife, Jane. She's very supportive. She gave me a lot of confidence in my ability to work in academia. If I never had her support, I probably couldn't have done that. Yeah, she was actually very influential in keeping me stable and allowing me to do what I did. I'd always come home, if I had any issues, I could talk to her and she would give me the answers that I needed. It'd have to be Bridget. She was a beautiful, beautiful lady, beautiful spirit. It was straight away had a double mastectomy, so it wasn't a thing of falling in love with a lady who had beautiful boobs, who had a lovely figure. It was falling in love with someone that had a beautiful spirit. We never argued once. We woke up every morning. She always had a smile on her face. Whatever we did was a nice experience. We was never bored. It just felt so natural. It wasn't hard work. It was easy. I always think about the sort of message I could give to my daughters to help them. But daughters don't listen to their dads because, as far as I'm concerned, I'm their dad. I'm an old man. Yeah, what do I know? They've never caused me any problems, so they don't expect an awful lot. They work very hard. They're very honourable. They're very conscientious. They care about things. I would love, if anything, to teach them more about the spiritual side of life. Some of these therapies that I actually practice, I would love them to get seriously involved in that and maybe understand that they can help themselves to get over their anxieties. Although I might think I'm going to influence them and help them have a better life, sometimes my interference might actually, be a negative. I don't know. back in the early 70s, I was driving back from a place called Bognor Regis in England, and we were going through an area that I didn't really know. My girlfriend, her sister, and a friend. And I said to them, you need to put your seatbelts on. We had never worn seatbelts before in my life. And in those days, the seatbelts were really long things. They weren't pull-back seatbelts that you get today. And I had to lift the seats up and untangle them, get them out. And the girls weren't very happy about that, but I insisted that we put seatbelts on. We then drove off. A little while later, I pulled off the road into a garage, which was closed, with the engine running, to check on the map where we was. And then suddenly I looked in the mirror and I saw these lights coming towards me. And I remember screaming, they're going to hit us. And next thing, the car took off and turned through the air. It travelled 30 metres through the air and landed upside down. And all I can remember was I was turning the engine off as we was flying through the air so the car didn't catch fire. And we landed and no one was hurt. I'm not sure a case of transcending and, if I died, I'll still become Stefan up there somewhere, because I don't think that's true. I think my life force would be up there. I won't be going up there looking back on my life as Stefan and saying what I did right and what I did wrong, because to me that doesn't make sense. It might be more of a case of the soul might say, well, that was a nice experience or that was a bad experience. I need to maybe change that experience or experience something else. I don't know. Sometimes I get worried because I would hate to come back as an animal, as a mouse or something that might be eaten by a snake. I have a fear of snakes, so I really don't want to be eaten by a snake, and I wouldn't want to be a snake and have to eat something else. I'd like to think there is some kind of life after death, but if there's not, it can't be painful because we won't know about it. And if everything dies, dying can't be that bad. I think probably what people really worry about is their memories. Will people remember me? What will my legacy be? I think the things that I've done well in my life directly, I think the best things I've done in my life was in the teaching. I know I did a lot of good when I was a lecturer at college. I know my students did well. They've all fed back to me and said what a great time they had and how they actually become very, very successful. So that's my real legacy. I enjoy doing my therapies. I enjoy seeing people get better. I enjoy seeing people improve their lifestyle. I love socialising with people. I love people to be happy. I love hearing stories. I love people telling their stories. There's a story I can tell you. When I left college, I was doing a bit of photography, but I was still working on the building sites for my dad to earn money because I was just beginning to make my name in photography. And that's when the Prime Minister then was Margaret Thatcher. And that was when they were talking about people being lazy. Get on your bike and go and find a job. Don't be a lazy bum. Go and get work. Get on your bike was a very famous phrase. And one day I was working with my father, plastering a building site. In those days, we never had phones. We had a pager. So I had a pager. So if a job came up, they would page me. I would then go to a phone box and phone them and go and do the jobs that I had to do. On this particular day, a pager came and I was asked to go and photograph Margaret Thatcher, who was the Prime Minister. So I had to meet her in the afternoon in this place called Queen Elizabeth Hall, just me and her. She was quite a scary character, so I was a bit nervous, but I went there. She was very professional. And I really wanted to say to her what I was doing that morning. That morning I was covered in plaster working a building site. In the afternoon, I'm photographing you and you've got no idea what I was doing before. I always regret not telling her that. That was quite interesting, I thought. When we were at school, we were given 3 choices as far as our careers were concerned, and that was working at a building site, a factory or shops. That's not education, that's control. You've got to tell children, give them the experience of what's possible for them, and they can't know that as children. Some children do know what they want to do, and lots of children don't. I would say to a youngster, these are your possibilities. Give them a range of things they can do and can achieve, and what they need to know to do those things. A lot of people wouldn't think about becoming a fashion photographer at the age of 14 or a ballet dancer or a writer. For youngsters, I'd say you need to give them a broad variety of things that are possible for them to achieve, and they don't need to be academically clever to achieve those sort of things. So giving advice is telling youngsters they can do anything they want, even if they don't believe it at the time. Don't believe what people tell you. Open your mind. Look what else is possible. Don't be a lemming. Don't follow the crowd. You can't teach someone to be a creative. You can recognise talent and you can nurture the talent. You can't teach it. The talent's already there in some form or other. What you do as an adult or as an educator, as a mentor, is to draw that information out or guide them in the right direction. You're not teaching them to be creative. You're showing them different ways of using their abilities, yeah? So I think nurturing talent is the most important thing. Spotting what that child is capable of. That's really the most important thing. It's hard to go for 50 years in 10 minutes, yeah? Yeah, okay. So I've been very lucky. So, yeah, cheers. So my luck's, so I've had a good life, and I've had great experiences. I've never wanted, I've had downs and I've had ups. And sometimes I wonder why I've had this great life. I've mixed with famous people. I've worked with presidents, prime ministers, royal family, famous pop stars. I've experienced life across the board. I've been very, very lucky. I've worked in education. I've worked in photography. I've done construction. I've travelled. I've made videos. I've written books. I've, you name it, I've done it. There's an old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. But I'd rather be a jack of all trades and have all that experience than just master one trade and be boring. And for someone that's come from my background, again, with no qualifications, working class background, given no hope at school, told that you're useless, that you're not bright enough to do exams, that was an achievement.